The scent of roasted chicken usually filled our kitchen with warmth, a comforting prelude to Sunday dinner at the Thompson household. For me, Sophia, a vibrant 25-year-old, these evenings were the epitome of the domestic bliss I'd so eagerly embraced. I had just married Mark, my wonderful husband, 6 months prior, and slipped into the role of homemaker with a surprising ease. My world, once a whirlwind of college deadlines and part-time jobs, was now a serene tableau of fresh flowers, organized pantries, and the quiet joy of building a home. I loved Mark, adored his quiet strength, and cherished the warm, if a little formal welcome I'd received from his parents, Eleanor and Robert. They were pillars of the community, respectable, well-off, and outwardly perfectly traditional. My life felt like a meticulously crafted dream. Mark and I had just bought our first house, a cozy suburban haven with a sprawling backyard perfect for future barbecues. We'd painted the nursery a soft, gender-neutral cream, filled it with anticipation, not furniture, and spent evenings whispering about baby names, lost in the sweet fantasy of our future. Because, you see, the joyous news had arrived. I was pregnant. That morning, sickness, the subtle but undeniable fatigue, the positive test tucked away in my nightstand. It was all real. A tiny flutter in my womb, a universe beginning to form. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Mark. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment, perhaps tonight, over Eleanor's famous apple pie. It was a secret, a precious, shimmering secret that filled my every waking moment with an almost unbearable happiness. My world was expanding, promising a future of lullabies, tiny shoes, and unconditional love. The Sunday dinner was in full swing. Robert, Mark's father, a distinguished man with silver hair and an air of quiet authority, carved the chicken. Mark, ever attentive, was refilling wine glasses. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, a woman of impeccable taste and formidable presence, presided over the table, her usual air of cool elegance slightly softened tonight by what I assumed was the pleasant warmth of family. I sat there, my hand unconsciously resting on my still flat belly, savoring the moment. I watched Mark laugh at something his father said, and felt a surge of love so profound it almost hurt. This was it. This was my family. And tonight I would share our beautiful secret. Just as Robert was about to serve the first slice of chicken, Eleanor cleared her throat, a delicate, almost theatrical sound that commanded immediate attention. The conversation died down. Mark looked at his mother, a puzzled expression on his face. "Family," Eleanor announced, her voice unusually resonant, a slow, radiant smile spreading across her face. Her eyes, usually so composed, sparkled with an almost triumphant light. "Robert and I have some wonderful news to share." My heart gave a happy lurch. Had they won the lottery? Were they going on a dream vacation? Perhaps they were retiring early, ready to embrace a new chapter. I squeezed Mark's hand under the table, my own secret practically bursting to be told. This felt like a perfect moment for a double announcement. Robert, usually so reserved, beamed at his wife, placing a tender hand on her shoulder. "Indeed, darling," he said, his voice brimming with an uncharacteristic emotion. "It seems we have been blessed." Eleanor took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping around the table, lingering on Mark, then me, before settling on a distant point. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, a bell tolling in a silent cathedral. I froze. My hand, still resting on my belly, instinctively recoiled. The joyful flutter of my own secret evaporated, replaced by a cold, leaden stone. My happiness was abruptly overshadowed by a shocking announcement. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, was also pregnant. For a full 5 seconds, absolute silence reigned in the dining room, broken only by the gentle clinking of cutlery. Then, an explosion of sound. "Mom! You're kidding!" Mark exclaimed, his chair scraping back as he shot to his feet, his face a mixture of shock and dawning joy. He rushed to Eleanor, enveloping her in a huge hug. "Oh my God, Mom, that's incredible at your age!" Robert chuckled, a deep, satisfied sound. A miracle, son. A true miracle. He kissed Eleanor's forehead, his pride radiating off him in palpable waves. I sat there, utterly stunned, my perfectly crafted dream dissolving into a surreal nightmare. Eleanor was in her late 50s, a woman who had gone through menopause years ago. Pregnant? It defied logic, biology, everything I knew. But the elated faces of Mark and Robert, their doting attention already fully consumed by Eleanor, left no room for doubt. My own secret, once so vibrant and precious, now felt cheap, insignificant, swallowed whole by this unbelievable revelation. My joy, so raw and potent moments ago, twisted into a knot of confusion and a faint, chilling premonition. This wasn't the shared celebration I had envisioned. This was something else entirely. The family, including my husband Mark and father-in-law Robert, immediately shifted their focus, surrounding Eleanor with doting attention. It was as if a spotlight had swung blindingly away from me and onto her. They fussed over her, asked about her well-being, speculated about the gender, dreamt aloud about baby names. My own pregnancy, the tiny life within me, faded into utter invisibility. I tried to speak, to register my own news, but the words seemed to catch in my throat, tangled with a burgeoning resentment. Mark, my husband, the man who had whispered about baby names with me, was now completely absorbed in his mother, his face beaming with a childlike excitement I hadn't seen in years. "Are you okay, darling?" Eleanor asked me suddenly, her eyes meeting mine, and for a fleeting second I thought I saw not warmth, but a flicker of something sharp, something almost triumphant, deep within their depths. "You look a little pale." I'm fine," I managed, my voice thin. The chicken on my plate suddenly looked unappetizing. "It must be quite a shock, of course," Robert said, his tone kind but already distant, his focus back on Eleanor. "A baby in the family after all these years, a true blessing for us all. A true blessing for us all. But what about my blessing? What about my baby?" The words tasted like ash. My happiness, so carefully nurtured, was abruptly overshadowed, not just by the announcement, but by the overwhelming, almost suffocating focus on Eleanor. The domestic bliss I had envisioned now felt fragile, teetering on the edge of something far more unsettling. The thought of my own precious secret, now reduced to an unspoken whisper, filled me with a sudden, aching loneliness. This was not the perfect family. This was a family with a very distinct, very clear pecking order, and I had just learned, in the most shocking way possible, exactly where I stood. The days following Eleanor's announcement blurred into a nightmarish haze. My initial shock hardened into a grim reality. My own precious pregnancy, the tiny life fluttering within me, became a ghost, invisible to everyone but me. I found myself abruptly relegated to the role of a servant. The unspoken rules of the Thompson household, once subtle, now became glaringly obvious, enforced with an insidious cruelty that chipped away at my spirit, piece by painful piece. The excuse was always the same, delivered with saccharine smiles and an unyielding tone. "Your mother-in-law is older, her pregnancy is harder. As a young wife, it's your duty to serve her." Every morning, I was expected to prepare Eleanor's special bland breakfast, served on a tray in bed, precisely at 7 a.m. This was followed by morning sickness for me, alone in the privacy of our bathroom, while Eleanor, pampered and fussed over, held court in the living room. Mark, who used to bring me coffee, was now solely focused on Eleanor's comfort, fetching her herbal teas and massaging her feet. Robert, my father-in-law, echoed his wife's every complaint, reinforcing my subordinate role. My days became an endless cycle of chores. Doing Eleanor's laundry by hand because the machine was too rough for her delicate silks, running errands for her bizarre pregnancy cravings at odd hours, cleaning the house because she found the scent of cleaners nauseating, and arranging her fresh flowers daily. I cooked all her meals, meticulously following her dietary restrictions, while my own nausea often made the smell of food unbearable. I even found myself giving her foot rubs, forcing a smile while resentment coiled in my stomach. My own needs, my own delicate pregnancy, were utterly ignored. When I mentioned my fatigue, Eleanor would sigh dramatically. "Oh, Sophia, you're so young. You have boundless energy. Imagine my fatigue at my age." Mark, always siding with his mother, would gently chide me. "Mom's right, honey. This is hard on her. You're strong." I was strong, yes, but I was also exhausted. The relentless physical and emotional strain was taking its toll. My once vibrant spirit dimmed. The joy I had felt about my baby was slowly being eclipsed by a creeping anxiety. I started skipping meals, my appetite non-existent. Sleep was a restless, fragmented affair, haunted by Eleanor's constant demands, real or imagined. One afternoon, 3 grueling months into this nightmare, I was attempting to carry a heavy basket of Eleanor's freshly laundered silks up the grand staircase. My head swam, my vision blurred, and a sharp, sudden pain seized my lower abdomen. I stumbled, the basket falling with a soft thud, and then the world went black. I woke to the sterile scent of disinfectant and the muted sounds of a hospital. Mark was there, his face pale, looking worried. Eleanor and Robert hovered anxiously in the background, their concern, I realized with a bitter pang, primarily for the disruption to their carefully constructed world. "Sophia, darling, are you all right?" Mark asked, taking my hand. Before I could answer, Eleanor interjected, "We were so worried. You gave us quite a fright. We thought something terrible had happened to the baby." The implication was clear, her baby, not mine. A doctor, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, approached my bedside. She gave me a sympathetic look that made my heart sink. She spoke softly, professionally, but her words fell on me like sledgehammers. "Mrs. Thompson," she began, "we ran a full panel of tests. I'm so sorry, but at 5 months pregnant, you've suffered a miscarriage." The world tilted on its axis. Miscarriage. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. My baby, my precious tiny baby, gone. A guttural cry tore from my throat, a sound of raw, unimaginable grief. Tears streamed down my face, hot and furious, all the exhaustion, all the pain, all the silent resentment condensed into this single, devastating truth. My baby was gone, because I had been too tired, too stressed, too utterly depleted by the demands of a cruel, self-absorbed family. Mark, startled by my outburst, tried to comfort me. "Sophia, honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were pregnant." His words ignited a fresh wave of rage. "You didn't know?" I shrieked, tears blinding me. "How could you not know? I was sick every morning. I was exhausted. I was doing everything for your mother while I was pregnant with our child. How could you be so blind?" Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sophia, what a terrible thing to say. This is a tragedy for all of us, but to blame your husband and me, blame you," I interrupted, my voice rising to a furious crescendo. "Yes, I blame you. Both of you. You worked me to death. You treated me like a servant. It's your duty to serve her. That's what you said, wasn't it, Eleanor, while I was carrying your grandchild?" "Sophia, please," Mark pleaded, trying to calm me. "Mom is pregnant too." "She needs to stay calm. This isn't fair. This is just grief talking." "Grief?" I screamed, pushing his hand away. "Yes, it's grief. My baby is gone. Because you were too busy doting on her to see what was happening to me. You prioritized her comfort over my health, over our child." Mark's face hardened. His sympathy evaporated, replaced by a familiar defensiveness. "That's enough, Sophia. You're being irrational. Mom is pregnant. Her health is delicate. We all had to make sacrifices. This is a tragedy, yes, but it's not Mom's fault, or Dad's, or mine." "Not your fault," I echoed, my voice shaking with fury. "You watched me. You saw me struggling. You told me I was strong while I was literally falling apart. You picked your mother over me, Mark. You picked her convenience over our child's life." His eyes, usually so loving, now burned with a cold, protective loyalty to his mother. "Don't you dare speak about my mother like that. She's carrying a baby too. She deserves respect." The words, "She's carrying a baby too," echoed in my ears like a death knell. He still didn't get it. He still wouldn't choose me. He still wouldn't see my pain, my loss, my sacrifice. He still prioritized her even now, when our own child was gone. The profound disrespect and betrayal were absolute. My grief, fresh and raw, mingled with a burning, unyielding anger. "So that's it then?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, all emotion drained from it, replaced by a chilling clarity. "Your mother and her baby are more important than me, more important than our baby." Mark didn't answer, but his gaze, fixed on Eleanor, spoke volumes. A sharp, unbearable pain lanced through me, far worse than any physical discomfort. It was the pain of a broken heart, a shattered marriage, a future irrevocably lost. My eyes, though blurry with tears, focused on Mark's face, then on Eleanor's, who now looked smug, almost victorious. The realization hit me with crushing force. I was utterly alone in this family. My baby was gone, and the people who should have supported me had actively, systematically contributed to its loss. There was nothing left for me here. Nothing. "Then I'm done," I whispered, the words barely audible. "I'm done with you, Mark. I'm done with this family. I want a divorce." Mark's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock finally appearing on his face, but it was too late. The damage was done. The dream was dead. And I was leaving. The silence that followed was broken only by my quiet sobs, but beneath them, a fierce resolve was already taking root. I had lost my baby, but I wouldn't lose myself. Not to them. The words, "I want a divorce," had been a blade, sharp and final. Mark's face, a mask of disbelief and betrayal, was the last thing I saw as I walked out of that hospital room. There were pleas, frantic and desperate, from him, from Eleanor, from Robert. They begged me to reconsider, to stay, to accept their sympathy for my loss, while simultaneously demanding my continued servitude, but their pleas were empty, hollow echoes against the roar of my grief and fury. I kept walking. Despite Mark's pleas, I walked away, leaving him and his self-absorbed family to their relentless focus on Eleanor and the unborn baby. The first few weeks were a blur of pain, exhaustion, and the profound, aching emptiness where my baby should have been. I moved into a small apartment, starkly different from the Thompsons' opulent home. The silence, initially terrifying, gradually became a balm. There were no demands, no cold justifications, no expectation of servitude, just me and my grief. I cut off all contact with the Thompsons. I blocked their calls, ignored their emails, and focused solely on healing my shattered body and spirit. My lawyer handled the divorce swiftly. Mark, surprisingly, didn't fight it much. His concern, I suspected, was still entirely consumed by his mother and her miracle pregnancy. Through the quiet network of mutual acquaintances, the kind that hums with gossip in affluent suburbs, news eventually trickled back to me. The Thompson family continued to dote on Eleanor and the newborn after the baby boy arrived. It was apparently a grand affair. Photos of the cherubic infant, little Robert Jr. Component placement flooded social media, surrounded by the beaming faces of Mark, Robert, and Eleanor. The narrative was clear: the perfect family, complete with their new, precious heir. I tried not to let it affect me. My world was shrinking, yes, but it was also becoming truly my own. I started taking long walks, rediscovering the simple joy of movement. I reconnected with old friends who hadn't been thrilled about my sudden disappearance into domesticity. I began to mend. Then came the first unexpected twist, delivered by my lawyer. "Sophia, this is unusual. Mark Thompson just got the final settlement. It's not much." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. Mark came from immense wealth. "Well," my lawyer said, a note of bewilderment in her voice, "it seems Robert and Eleanor, driven by a desire to secure the family legacy exclusively through their new son, transferred all their inheritance and assets directly to the infant." My jaw dropped. To the baby? Robert and Eleanor, known for their shrewd business acumen, had essentially disinherited their adult son. Mark was left with virtually nothing, just a nominal allowance, barely enough to cover his basic expenses. The entire multi-million-dollar estate, the family trust, the properties, all placed in an unbreakable trust for Robert Jr., to be managed by a distant family foundation until he came of age. "They cut Mark out entirely?" I asked, stunned. "Why?" According to the probate documents, it was to ensure the purity of the Sterling lineage and to secure the financial future of the only true male heir of the Thompson line. "It's pretty extreme, even for old money families," she explained. A cold, bitter satisfaction curled in my stomach. This was the ultimate irony. Mark, who had so readily dismissed me and our child for his mother's legacy, had now been discarded himself, replaced by a newborn. He was no longer the favored son, he was merely the older brother to the true heir. The doting attention he'd given his mother had, inadvertently, led to his own financial ruin. The phone calls started soon after. Mark, frantic, desperate, his voice, once so calm and self-assured, now quivered with desperation. "Sophia, please, you have to talk to me," he'd plead. "They cut me off. My parents, they gave everything to Daniel, Robert Jr. I have nothing left." Desperate and regretful, Mark frantically sought out Sophia, begging for reconciliation, but I calmly and firmly refused him. "Mark," I'd say, my voice steady, "what happened to us? What happened to our baby? That wasn't about money. It was about respect. It was about you choosing them over me, over us. You had your chance. You made your choice." He'd argue, he'd cry, he'd try to shift blame to his parents, but I wouldn't budge. "I'm not going back to that, Mark, not ever." He didn't just lose me, he lost his identity, his future, everything he'd taken for granted. He was adrift, a spoiled prince suddenly without a kingdom. Meanwhile, life in the Thompson household, once so meticulously ordered, began to unravel spectacularly. I received updates, sometimes from well-meaning but gossipy friends, sometimes through cryptic social media posts from distant relatives. Robert and Eleanor, in their late 50s, quickly discovered that caring for a newborn was not the idyllic blessing they had imagined. They had always had staff, always been served. Now they were on diaper duty, sleepless nights, and constant demands. The relentless demands of caring for an infant in their later years soon overwhelmed Robert and Eleanor, who, accustomed to being served, found themselves struggling. "Eleanor looks like she aged 20 years in 6 months, a friend whispered to me over coffee. "And Robert's always got dark circles under his eyes. They're hiring and firing nannies every other week." Their perfectly manicured facade began to crack. Their arguments, once hushed and discreet, became legendary. Neighbors heard shouting, doors slamming. Their household descended into chaos, with constant arguments and recriminations. "You wanted this baby, Robert!" Eleanor would shriek, according to one account relayed to me. "You said it was a blessing. Now he won't stop crying and I haven't slept in days." "It's your miracle, Eleanor," Robert would retaliate. "You're the one who always talked about the family legacy. I'm too old for this." Mark, still living with them, now serving as their de facto assistant and glorified babysitter, was caught in the middle. He complained constantly, his social media posts shifting from photos of his perfect family to thinly veiled laments about exhaustion and parental bickering. His parents, who had once doted on him, now treated him with a dismissive irritation, constantly reminding him that his only value was in helping care for the real heir. The tables had turned, the master had become the servant, and the former servant was finally free. I heard that Eleanor, still struggling with the physical aftermath of a late-in-life pregnancy and the exhaustion of a newborn, was constantly ill. Robert, stressed and sleep-deprived, was making terrible business decisions, jeopardizing what little personal wealth he had left. The legacy they had so desperately secured for their infant son was quickly becoming a gilded cage, trapping them in a life of endless demands and bitter recriminations. The self-absorbed Thompsons, who had deemed my grief insignificant and my needs negligible, were now consumed by their own creation. The duty they had imposed on me, the endless servitude, was now their own inescapable reality. And there was no young, discarded wife to step in and serve them. They were alone in their chaos, forced to face the consequences of their own choices. My life, by contrast, was flourishing. I had healed. I had returned to work, not just to any job, but to a role that challenged and excited me. I was good at it. More than good. I was thriving. The confidence that had been systematically stripped away during my marriage was returning, stronger and more resilient than ever. I was no longer Sophia the homemaker, Sophia the wronged wife, or Sophia the grieving mother. I was Sophia, the independent, capable woman, building my own future, on my own terms. The chaos of the Thompson household, a distant echo now, no longer held any sway over my life. The bitter scent of their escalating arguments, their desperate pleas to Mark, and their endless complaints about their miracle baby never reached my quiet apartment. While they imploded under the weight of their own selfishness, I, Sophia, was quietly, diligently rebuilding. The first few months after the divorce were about healing, physical rest, emotional solitude, and the slow, arduous process of grieving the baby I had lost. I focused on gentle walks, healthy meals, and reconnecting with friends who had seen through the Thompson facade long before I did. They offered unwavering support, a stark contrast to the transactional nature of my married life. Their genuine concern was a balm to my wounded soul. Once my strength returned, I knew I couldn't stay a homemaker in an empty home. I needed a purpose, a challenge that would demand my intellect and drive. I re-entered the workforce, choosing a challenging corporate role in a dynamic marketing firm. It was a plunge into the unknown, but I embraced my independence with a ferocity born of past constraint. I channeled my resilience, leveraging the organizational skills I'd honed as a homemaker and the problem-solving abilities I'd always possessed. The corporate world, initially daunting, quickly became my arena. I discovered a passion for strategic planning and client relations. I thrived on the intellectual challenge, the collaborative spirit of my new team. My ideas were heard, my contributions valued, and my efforts recognized. I quickly rose through the ranks, proving to myself and to everyone else that my worth was inherent, not derived from my marital status or my ability to serve others. I became a confident, successful woman, defined by my own achievements and propelled by a newfound sense of self-reliance. My social life flourished, too. No longer confined to the rigid expectations of the Thompson family, I forged genuine friendships based on shared interests and mutual respect. I learned to discern true character, recognizing the red flags of entitlement and manipulation from miles away. And yes, as my confidence radiated, I found myself pursued by many who admired my strength and self-reliance. These were men who saw me for who I was, intelligent, independent, and full of life, not as a means to an end or a vessel for their family legacy. I dated, I laughed, I learned, and I slowly, cautiously, opened myself up to the possibility of a healthier, more balanced partnership. News of the Thompsons, however, continued to trickle in. Their descent was public and undeniable. Robert and Eleanor, who had so proudly disinherited Mark to secure their lineage through little Robert Jr., found themselves utterly overwhelmed by the realities of parenting in their late 50s. Their perfect facade crumbled. The mansion, once meticulously clean, was now, according to one mutual acquaintance, often in disarray. The constant presence of a wailing infant, the sleepless nights, the endless demands for attention, it all chipped away at their composure. "They're a mess," a friend told me over lunch, shaking her head. "Eleanor complains constantly about her health and the lack of sleep. Robert looks like he's aged 20 years. They've gone through 5 nannies this year alone, saying no one is competent enough." The irony wasn't lost on me. They, who had demanded my subservience, were now utterly dependent, exhausted, and miserable. The miracle baby they had celebrated became a relentless source of friction, fueling constant arguments and recriminations between Robert and Eleanor. Their grand legacy had become a gilded cage, trapping them in a cycle of bitterness and fatigue. Mark, too, spiraled. Stripped of his inheritance, living in the chaotic, unhappy household, he was a shadow of his former self. His desperate pleas for reconciliation had ceased months ago, replaced by infrequent, mournful emails expressing regret. I never replied. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. He had chosen entitlement. I had chosen dignity. My story, I realized, underscored a powerful message. True happiness and fulfillment are found in self-respect, independence, and choosing a path where one's worth is genuinely valued, not in sacrificing oneself for the whims of others. I had been a homemaker, hoping to build a family. I had lost a child and a marriage. But from that devastation, I had built something far more resilient and beautiful, myself. I reflected on the young woman who had walked into that Sunday dinner brimming with a secret joy, only to have it brutally extinguished. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that the greatest strength lay not in silent endurance, but in fierce self-advocacy. I had learned that my worth was not tied to my ability to please or serve others, but to my own integrity, my own intellect, and my own capacity for joy. My life was full, not with designer bags or grand estates, but with genuine connections, fulfilling work, and the quiet triumph of reclaiming my own narrative. The Thompson family had their legacy, but it came at the cost of their happiness, their peace, and their dignity. I had chosen a different path, and it had made all the difference. And so, the story of Sophia, the woman who found her strength after being pushed to her breaking point, concludes. Her journey reminds us that even from the depths of betrayal and loss, it's possible to forge a path to genuine happiness and true fulfillment. If Sophia's resilience and transformation resonated with you, if her story inspired you to choose self-worth over external validation, please consider liking this story, subscribing for more narratives that explore personal growth and the power of finding your own voice, and commenting below with your thoughts and reflections. Your insights are incredibly valuable to us, and we truly appreciate you joining us on this impactful journey. Thank you for reading, and we hope to connect with you again soon.